of that phenomenon online when you're looking for a recipe and you go to the webpage and there's a whole story before the actual recipe, and it frustrates a lot of people, including me. I know my videos are sometimes like that, and I've been trying to tighten it up. But for this particular tune, Conception, it's so complicated that we need a lot of exposition and slow talking before we're able to sort of dig deep enough into this complicated tune. So let's do that together now. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rybicki. I'm glad that you're here. As I mentioned, there needs to be a lot of talking before we get to a lot of playing. And to that end, I'm actually going to do 2 videos here. I'll release the next one next week. And what I want to do is split up the theme of each video. This one is what was played by others. And then the next one next week will be how do we improvise on these chord changes on this tune. So as I mentioned, it's a complicated tune that was written by George Shearing in 1949. There's a little bit of debate about that, but I believe that it was George Shearing because of my sources, including the scholar Lewis Porter, who has some pretty strong evidence that it was indeed George Shearing who wrote it. And to that end, I'm using his specific melody and his chords as well because he wrote it. And there are other versions that go away from that, and they're fantastic, but I wanted to use just this one in this particular series. Taking on more melodies than the original would be too complicated for the amount of videos I'm doing. So the other versions, there's a famous Miles Davis version, there's an Art Blakey version, Clifford Brown, Bill Evans, Ari Honig has a great version, Charlie Hayden has a version. Like, lots of people do this, and many people change the actual melody. Miles changes even the bridge entirely. People change sort of the arrangement. The Art Blakey version has like a pedal on the bridge instead of playing the bridge melody. I think it's important to go to the source and figure out exactly what George Shearing intended and then go from there. So one miscellaneous thing is that in the many PDFs that I have, pay attention to the key signature, whether or not, meaning whether or not it's there. I generally am using the key signature of D flat because it's thought of in D flat major, but sometimes I don't have a key signature for specific reasons like the fingering, which we'll talk about. For the melody itself, I have a couple of fingering options, and there's a couple things I wanted to talk about with the melody real quick. In what George Shearing is doing, there are some ornamental 16th notes that I've removed when I play them, and I suggest you do too. It is not necessary really to put them in there, but trying to play them can be fun. And some of the fingering that I chose allows for those 16th notes if you want to do it that way. Generally, they have to be slurred. So I've got 2 fingering options because a combination of them is what worked for me in faster performance, but I wanted to give you sort of just empty data, so to speak, of fingering so that you can make the choices as to what works best for you. The other thing I wanted to mention is if you'll notice this notation on the bridge, the rhythmic notation, looks real funny, and I get that. Just listen to it a bunch of times. It's kind of a way of notating how it feels like behind the beat, but it's very specific every time. And so I feel like it was intentional. And I feel like this notation does capture exactly what is being played, but I wouldn't necessarily try to sight read that. Just listen to it a bunch of times and imitate that. So let's talk about a few of the fingering things. Let me move closer here and turn to the side so we can see my hands a little bit better. And let's see how that looks, okay? And so Generally, what I'm doing when I'm playing faster is, as I say, a combination of the fingerings I chose. Let's take this very first phrase and look at a couple different ways to do it. The first way, and the main way I'm doing it fast, is A flat with the fourth finger here, right? And then open A, like that. Then D flat 4, F 2, A flat 1, B natural, shift to 4, and then the A natural is right there on the 1, E is right there. So again, that works for me, but there is another option that I've given you that may work better for you. That would be to start on the second finger on the A flat and slur the A natural with your fourth finger. And now D flat is under the second finger. Whoops, intonation. F is first. Now we shift to A flat on the D string. Now the B natural is right here. We don't have to shift for that, but we got to go to A. So you could go down, but that's an awkward movement for me. So I chose a little unusual thing, which was to go the A on the D string, which is here. But then the E is right under the fourth finger too. So that in time would be. And this sets up the fingering that I think works best in both instances, at least for me, I should say. It works best for me, which is that you've ended on the E here. And the next notes are G flat, A flat, and A natural, which is also F sharp, G sharp, and A. So if I shift here, G flat, A natural, A flat, there. That could work, or I've also got G flat, A natural back to 4. In both instances, I've got this kind of option, or at least I'm playing that, because the next note is C sharp, which is right on my fourth finger. If we do it the other way, F sharp, the Samandel way, F sharp, G sharp, A, G sharp, that feels good, but now I got to get from this G sharp here to C sharp. It's just a matter of sort of what gets swallowed when you use the fingering that you want to use. This next part, I feel like it isn't terribly, oh, I'm sorry, well, let me play that phrase. So then we got to go, I'm playing this leap here. C sharp, B, and now we got to jump down to E. Because it goes E to F sharp, I'm willing to take that leap. This B, and now I'm jumping down a fifth to E, which is like super weird, but how else are you going to do it? Right? And then B flat, and then we got to go to G flat here. So you can do that, or you can go 2, 4, and then this part, F to G flat. You can even slur that like. And then it kind of goes to this major sound, the E major sound. This is, I'm all thinking there like E major. Now, here, what I'm tend to play is go back down to the G sharp here, which is like. But if you go, starting from that last phrase, and now if I play 1 here, the G sharp is right here under my fourth. You can even do that. It should play 1 because the next phrase is B. But, so it's a matter of, if I put 1 there, oops. Now, this is how I played it on the video here. But really the most logical thing would probably be I'm playing B, D flat, E flat. Because the next note is D flat, so I got to shift back down here. So it would make more sense to go play the E flat here. But I found that awkward for me, and the intonation was questionable, more questionable than mine usually is. So that's a couple thoughts. On the bridge itself, I just chose the same fingering for everything. This makes the most sense to me, especially because we've got these 16th notes in here, which again, you can reduce yourself if you want. I tried not to, but it's really hard to get those clean at a fast tempo. The bridge goes 1, 2, 3. So one more time, the bridge, 1, 2, 3. We're back to last A. As you can hear, I'm slurring. There, I'm slurring G sharp to A, B, I'm sorry, D natural. I'm trying to do that. So B hit the, I am playing C, B, the notes are C, B, A, D, C, B, A. So I'm trying to play C, B, A in one sort of breath. And then I'm using the open G to get my hand down. And then I'm sort of slurring that. So pull off F to E, D, C, B, pull off. Actually, I'm slurring the E to D. So the C to B is slurred. And now this is a tricky part. If you want to put the 16th notes, the notes are C sharp, D sharp to E, which we would normally do that, but the C sharp and D sharp are 16th notes, and it's on the recording very slurred. In fact, they do a little bit extra note than that. So I'm doing the best I can do, which is, so slurring to D sharp, E to E natural there. That's like an E major sound, still E major. Now here, this starts this sort of strange rhythmic phrase, and I'm playing, and then open G, and then it starts that same phrase again. It leads, it targets from a half step, it targets that same phrase down a whole step. Here's that same. Now, same thing again. It's all going down. Okay, so ups. Make sense? There is this little slide in the recording, but I can't get it fast. When I play it at a fast tempo, I can't get that slide in. And then this last phrase, I use the open G, because I got to go back to F sharp there. So G, F sharp, E, D sharp, F. But here, this is all sort of in one position. F, E, C, A, which leads perfectly to the A, back to the A flat. So hopefully that makes some sense to you. I think it's helpful to learn this melody. It's not necessary, but it's really helpful partially because on the Ugetsu album from Art Blakey, Reggie Workman plays the melody with the horns, and he also takes an extended solo on that, which is really cool. Nonetheless, so and I've heard other bass players play it too. It's just fun to play along with the horns, and it's a really nice technical challenge. And it really gets the sound of some of the harmony in your ear because the harmony is really confusing. So that I think is really an important thing to keep in mind when you're trying to play this tune, is to actually learn the melody. So let's move on now to talk about that harmony and how it was played and what some options are. The harmony tends to be an obstacle for playing this tune, and it is for me, for sure. It took me some real effort to try to make sense of what's happening here. Some of it I don't think has a great explanation, but what I ended up doing is just trying to find options for different ways to think about the chords that were played and written, and also to reduce some things so that it's more manageable. I included two versions of the melody. One that I had my pianist friend confirm exactly what George Shearing is playing on the recording. That differs from what's in the real book. Not a ton, but it does differ from what's in the real book. I wanted you to have both so that you had both. I think what George Shearing plays informs a little bit of what the actual sort of vibe of the tune is a little bit better than what's in the real book. Some minor differences, but that I think can make a pretty big impact that we'll talk about. One other thing to note is that in the real book, in the bridge, on the last bar of the bridge, not the last bar, I'm sorry, on bar 4 of the bridge, almost every chart has that chord as A flat minor 7 to D flat 7. But it's coming from, and it has the sound to me of E major. So I'm putting those as G sharp minor 7 and C sharp 7, which are the enharmonic of A flat minor 7 and D flat 7. I'm putting that for a little bit more clue, like, no, this sound is supposed to be E major, except for that C sharp 7. But that C sharp 7 is leading to the next chord. So I just wanted to make that point there. There is a way that you can think about, there are many ways you can think about the tune, but one way I want to offer to you is to think about where the 2/5s are, because there are a lot, but I think that helps us to sort of tighten up a little bit on this. As I'll show on screen here, what I've done is assign where the 2/5s are in the tune. If you'll note, if you didn't know already, at least the way I learned at Berklee for Roman numeral analysis, when you've got a 2/5, you tend to bracket it at the bottom. And if the 5 resolves to some kind of 1, or the root is the 1 chord, the chord that happens, whatever the root is, would be the 1 that has an arrow. You'll notice that the solid arrow means that it is actually resolving to the 1 of that key, 2-5-1. But if it's a dotted arrow, it resolves to a chord that is not the right quality. So the root of the chord it is resolving to would be the root of the 1, but it's a different quality. Like in measure 8, I've got this dotted line that goes C sharp to F sharp. So C sharp 7 is the 5 of F sharp major, but it's an F sharp minor, so we've got a dotted line. If there's not, a dotted arrow. If there's not an arrow at all, that means it doesn't resolve to the 1 at all. That's one thing. I've also assigned colors to those 2/5 boxes where it's changing keys. So everything in D flat is this sort of blue-gray, things in G flat is lighter blue, so on and so forth. So hopefully that may give you a little bit of insight. The other thing on this page, and a very important thing to note as far as navigating these descending dominant chords, these descending chromatic dominant chords, which tends to be the sticking point for everybody, myself absolutely included, is that when you have this sort of movement, and it's really like it doesn't have a key center there per se at all. So there's a lot of possibilities. Remember I talk about dominant chords being very volatile, and they can accept many sounds. It's a very unstable thing in a way because it wants to move somewhere. You've got all this instability of all these dominant chords. The whole of bars 6 through 7, 8, 6 through 8 essentially, the whole of that is like a one big vibe of that. It's just like all these things can happen there. And this is the place where we'll see lots of alternatives things. But an important thing to note, to get to what I'm saying, is that when you have this kind of movement, all these chords can be or are tritone substitutions for other sounds. This is really a place to play with tritone substitutions. If you don't remember, tritone substitutions are almost always, essentially take a dominant chord make another dominant chord a tritone away from the root of that first chord. So if it's a C7, a tritone away would be G flat or F sharp. A G flat 7 is the tritone substitution for C. All these chords, as I say, can be, or you can play with, mix and match, put in together, so on and so forth. In fact, in the bass line, we'll hear from from George Duvivier. That's what he does, in fact. And also Reggie Workman does it too in one spot. So consider there that there is a lot of volatility, as I said. So that is one page to think about, one thing to think about. Another important point I want to make, a sticking point, is in bar 3. Oh my gosh, bar 3. As far as what the heck to do there. It's written in the real book as B minor 7. I do not think that's what it is. If it's a B minor something, it would be like B minor 11 with the 9 and the 13. Because there's definitely a G sharp in there on that moment. There's definitely, that would be the 13. There's definitely, the melody has a C sharp, that's the 9 of B. And there's also an E in there. So that's the 11. So the way I think about it more is some kind of E major chord over B. The E major chord could be an E6 because of the C sharp. It could be an E major. You could make it an E dominant chord. There's tons of options there. If you want to stick with B, though, you can think B minor 11. Just think B minor 11, thinking about getting the E in there. I'm sorry. Or that 11 there, which is E. You can also think B13 sus, which is do you want to be thinking that much? Maybe. But those also encompass a lot of those same notes. I mean, they do encompass those. That would be B, E, F sharp, A, B, that's a B sus, and then we've got a G sharp in there. And also that implies a C sharp too. So these are all chords that are written on this page that I'm showing you now that would cover those things. I tend to just think like E major there, or and we'll discuss in the next video talking about some chord options there, like an E major pentatonic. So going back to the first bar of these options, the chord is written, and is true, is an E flat minor 7 flat 5. Let's go over what that is. That would be E flat, flat 3 is G flat, flat 5, we're taking the B flat, we're going down a half step to A, then D flat is flat 7. Or the melody and the sound there also contains an A flat. So it's kind of like that's also a minor 11 chord as well. You could also think of this as these couple other things I have written here. I've got like A flat 7 sus with the flat 9. So that's the A flat 7 sus would be A flat, D flat, G flat, A flat, and then flat 9 is A. So you're getting almost all those chords, all those notes in there from E flat minor 7. You could also think D flat major 7 sharp 5, and we'll talk about using D flats in this tune in the next video. D flat major 7 sharp 5, D flat, F, then the natural 5 would be A flat, we're going to sharp that, so sharp 5, A natural, and then C. The C isn't really in that sound right there, but it works. That's one option. And then you could also think F sharp minor major 7. That's going to come in very handy in the soloing. That would be F sharp, A, C sharp, or D flat, which is in the E flat minor 7 flat 5, and then a natural 7 because it's a minor major 7, so F to F sharp. That sound is real helpful there. On the next chord, A flat 7 flat 9, some folks think D7 there as far as being able to improvise, and you could theoretically put that in your bass line because that descends E flat, D to D flat. It's the tritone sub of A flat 7. The thing to me is I don't hear that D natural in that moment. Like I just don't hear it. It doesn't mean you can't make it work. I don't really hear that. But a nice way to also think about the chord that may or may not help you with walking and or soloing would be a C fully diminished, because A flat 7 would be A flat, C, E flat, G flat. So if we go C, and it's got a flat 9 on it, right? So there's an A natural in there, A flat, C, E flat, A natural, G flat, E flat, C, A flat. Well, if we play C fully diminished, we have C again, E flat again, G flat again, and now the flat 9. So all we're doing is eliminating the root, essentially, and that makes that chord. The D flat, excuse me, the D flat on the next bar, just some kind of major sound. It could be major 6, major 7. Then we get to bar 3, as we discussed, some kind of E major sound or a derivation thereof. And then the next chord is A major 7, and then it goes to A flat of some kind. A flat triad is what exactly he played actually on the recording. I think E major for that whole bar actually, because that covers a bunch of options. If you want to be picky, of course, you should try to get that A flat in there, because that doesn't share a ton of notes with E major. I mean, E major, E, G sharp, B, D sharp, which is also E flat. And A flat would be A flat, that's the same as C, G sharp. And now C natural, which does not fit with E major. And then, but the E flat is the same as D sharp from E major. So this, your ear will get away with it, or it's passing by very fast. The next bar, it's, you know, got this 2/5, but just think of that as a 5. That reduces, I think, at least visual noise. And it's got a flat 9 on it as well. So D flat 7, D flat F, A flat, and then C flat, which is the same as B. You could also play with like fully diminished chords. So D fully diminished on that D flat. That's the root, D flat, flat 9. So you could think about it that way. I don't know if this necessarily makes it any easier. It might. The next chord is where we start this descent of things, and I have eliminated this next, the chord in beat 3 there. I'm just thinking G flat 7 for that whole bar, or interestingly, G flat major 7, because then you tend to get to the F in there, because it's the natural 7. G flat F, D flat, B flat, G. And that hints enough at the F7 that's there, that's just sort of a passing chord in a way, unless you want to take it on with those tritone substitutions we talked about. Then the next 2 bars, you see all these options here. What's written, B flat 7, A7, A flat 7, G7. With all these tritone subs, you can mix and match, including reducing what is there. So for the way I'm thinking about it, the way that you heard me play and the solo that I put in this video, is I'm just thinking B flat 7 there for that bar. In fact, you can play a blues language there and it works. If you're gonna play B flat 7, think about a G flat though. Have it be like B flat 7 flat 13. That would be the G flat, because the melody there is the G flat sound. That's one option. Folks, other people, commonly make this into like a minor 2/5. You'll see at the top option there, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat minor 7, D7. So that like perhaps may be easier to wrap your mind around. It's up to you. I wouldn't necessarily reduce that though to E flat 7. Like don't take the 2 away from there. Keep that as actual 2/5. That will, I think, confuse some of the sound there. That's one option. And then another interesting thing would be like if you go, if we start on bar 5, the D flat 7, then we go to G flat of some kind, right? Now check out this thing. If I put start with the tritone sub there, E7, E, G sharp, B, and then you can put the A or not, but you can keep that whole E7 there. And then you can go down to D, a tritone sub D, and then down again. D flat 7. So now I'm intending a different kind of descending movement. Next bar, I've reduced that also just to the 5. We've got a B7 flat 9, B, D sharp, F sharp, A, and then C natural. And you could make that, you could think there, of course, D sharp or E flat diminished to get the sound of the flat 9 in there if you want to. Then the next bar has some kind of E major and then A major. I'm just thinking E major for that whole bar. And then it's a normal 2-5, not with this. The E minor 7 does not have a flat 5 there. I've just thought of that as A flat 7, flat 9, going to D flat major. Cool. The bridge, a little bit easier to take in. It's a big 2-5 that essentially goes to E major for a little bit. So I've reduced that too. Again, now I'm playing B7, the 5 on bar 1. Then the next bar I'm trying to get the altered sound on there. If you don't remember, altered would be 1, flat 9, which is C, sharp 9 is D, the 3rd, D sharp, then the flat 5, F, the flat or sharp 5, G, flat 7, A, root. I'm trying to get that sound in there. And then E major for a whole bar. Don't worry about the F sharp minor. That's just a color passing thing. And then the next bar has this 2-5, again, reducing it to C sharp dominant because that's supposed to lead to, it's supposed to lead to the 2 chord, but it doesn't. It's a deceptive resolution where there's another 2-5, G minor 7 to C7. I'm just making that C7. Then F sharp minor 7 to B7. I'm just making that B7. Sharp 11 sounds good there, as I wrote in there. And then the last 2 bars are full measures of E minor 11, E minor 7 to A7. That's all A7. And you can also play with the extensions there. You could make it like, instead of F sharp, you can play F. You could play B flat theoretically. You could make it a flat 9 if you want to. So that's one way to think about all this stuff. It's a lot to think about. But thinking about this in this way will help you when you're improvising, soloing for sure, and may or may not give you some information when you are playing a walking bass line. Let's talk about walking in the next video. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that it was interesting and helpful for you. Look for part 2 next week. I will make sure that it gets up, and thank you for joining me today. Always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.